Hello, everybody, and welcome again to Nerd to the Third Power, your one-stop shop for all things nerdy and awesome. I am your host and master of ceremonies, Dr. Gonzo. With me, as always, in this epic quest of awesomeness is our resident anime goddess, the Cat. Cat, how are you doing?
Ooh, I am sweating so badly. I don't know if everybody else is in an excessive heat wave, but oh boy, it's hot.
Yeah, it got to like 105 over here where I'm at. It's pretty hot over here too. I've determined that we have done something to anger the sun god, and he is attempting to burn us in his rage.
I would agree with that. I know we as a human species are pretty awful and probably deserve it, but please, somebody make it stop.
Like, find whatever virgin goat you need to find to sacrifice, whatever, to make this heat just stop.
Seriously, I think we've had 3 excessive heat warnings. We had 3 at least in the month of June alone. That lasted like a week each. So almost all of June was just nothing but excessive heat warnings.
Yeah, it's
we had both a something on a bridge buckle from the heat, like it broke from the heat. And something on a road, some parts of a road, just collapsed from excessive heat.
Yeah, my response to this heat is best exemplified by an old Penny Arcade comic where Ted goes out with his wife and he's wearing a black motorcycle helmet and gloves, basically to protect every inch of his skin. And his wife is giving him shit for being embarrassing. He's just like, "Look, you wanted me outside. I'm outside. It's not my goddamn fault. Your world orbits a ball of fire."
It does. It's so hot. Make it stop.
The hellmouth has opened and the flames now lick at our heels. It's official. Summer is here.
I wore shorts, guys. I wore shorts. For me, that takes an act of God.
But anyway, so to distract ourselves from this brain-scrambling heat, we are going to be discussing Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, a movie that's been pretty hotly anticipated, no pun intended, by Kat at the very least. I don't know, my feelings about it are somewhat mixed, but we'll get to that. But first, as always, there's procedure to follow, so we're going to begin, as always, with Ask a Geek. And so we got some questions here. First one here is to you, Kat, and it is from Kelly, and she asks, with all the advancements with all the advancements in computer animation and art styles over the course of the last 20 years, do you find it hard to go back and watch anime from the 80s or 90s because of the change in visual style?
That's actually a really good question. I think partially because I was a 90s anime babe. I watched so much 90s anime when I was getting into it. It's easier for me to go back and watch older styles. I do have a hard time once you get into the 70s and maybe some of the early 80s stuff. But it's all, for me, it's genre specific. So my friends and I watched Kokowa Greenwood, Heroes Greenwood, and I hadn't seen it in a million years, and we were all like, "Oh my god, this is so old!" And my friend who managed to purchase a copy of Kokowa Greenwood is like, "I love it," because he's obsessed with older anime and he can't even watch new stuff because he just can't get over the style hump. And so I think I'm a good in-betweener. I get really, really impressed with a lot of the current, the fluidity of animation that exists now. It's just super, super impressive. And then you go back and you watch something old and you're like, oh man, so many still frames and recycled animation.
You can see when they're literally panning a camera over a mosaic.
Yeah, you notice that. So I find it more noticeable, but it's also very charming and nostalgic for me. So I'll never be able to be one of those people who's like, oh, I can't watch old things. It's so ugly or it's so dated or whatever. I can't be that person because I have such nostalgia for stuff. But I can totally understand why people do, because it's, when you see animation today and you look at animation of the past, you can see a lot of errors. You can see the shortcuts that had to be taken in order to produce it cheaply. So yeah, I mean, I try not to fault people for their likes and dislikes in terms of animation, but I'm not one of those people who like looks back at the past and scoffs.
All right, and she asked the same question to me of video games. And I don't typically have a problem playing older games because of their graphics. Mostly because a lot of the games that I play that I really enjoyed from back then have thankfully aged very well. Especially when it comes to sprite-based games. Because sprite games tend to be very timeless. They tend to age very gracefully, just because of the nature of how they're done. It's almost like looking at I say it's almost like looking at drawings rather than like a realistic photograph, which is kind of a flawed comparison to make. 3D games, there are some that I go back and I kind of have to go, oh god, I can't believe that I thought that this looked incredible. Because as technology has advanced, I can go back and look at some of those older games and see like some of the shortcuts that they had to take to make them look the way that they did. No, where I have serious problems going back and playing some older games is with control styles, and I'll give you a really good example of a game that's actually not even all that old, but Resident Evil 4. I have played both the GameCube version and the Wii version. And for those who have not played either, the Wii version actually uses the nunchuck for you to move around and the Wii remote for you to aim your gun. Okay? That has since become the only way that I am able to play the game. I recently purchased the HD re-release on Steam over the summer sale, and I fired it up to try and play it. And I realized that they hadn't remapped the controls to suit a modern control scheme. It's still single-stick movement. The right stick is used for nothing at all. And I'm used to, nowadays, with all these shooter games, having you move with the left control stick and aim and look around with the right stick. I couldn't go back to that old single-stick style. So the new HD re-release is pretty much unplayable for me. But I really wanted to play Resident Evil 4 again, so I actually had to go digging into my back closet and pull out my Wii collection, so I could play the Wii version again. So now I'm confronted with a new problem, which is I want to be able to play the game in HD, but they don't make an HD adapter for the Wii that actually fucking works, and the Wii U only outputs in 480i. But I guess that's a hurdle that I would say is, as far as visuals go, is it's difficult for me to go back a couple generations to the console games that came out just before HD graphics and try and play them on an HD television. But that's more an issue with the technology and the incompatibility there than with me just not liking older stuff. It's very hard for me to play stuff on a Wii on an HD television because it all just looks grainy and stretched out. But that's an issue of the technology and not with my personal preference. So, anyway, let's see here now. Next question here. Okay, here's a really good one. And this one comes from Peter. And he asks, what is the most unusual way you have seen someone express their fandom? So, Kat, since you're big into the con scene, I'm sure you've seen some really unusual expressions of fandom. So, what's the most surprising way you've seen someone express their love of something?
Gosh,
I'm going to add the caveat: no creepy things, please. We want good things, not things that make us question people's mental stability.
I don't know. I can't tell you like the weirdest one, but I can tell you my favorite thing to see for people expressing their fandom. My favorite thing to see is when people do like crossover cosplays where they'll like mishmash two characters, squish them together and cosplay that. Or something along those lines, like Pokemon trainer versions of something, or Final Fantasy versions of Sailor Moon characters, or Sailor Moon character versions of some other characters, like Sailor Moon versions of Disney princesses, like that sort of thing. I find that insanely creative. I'm always so interested in what people decide to do when they do crossover cosplay like that. Because I think it takes a lot of talent, and obviously it's stuff that there's not going to be patterns for, and I'm always interested in what people come up with. it was actually one of the most entertaining things. My parents came to my anime convention that I run every year, and they haven't come in, like 10 years, like legitimately 10 years of this fucking convention existing. They haven't come to it. And so I handed them some day passes, and they walked around for a couple of hours, and I said, look over there, that character is a combination of something and something else that they might have recognized. And they were like, that's so wild, people are so creative. And I thought, yeah, people really are insanely creative, and I think it's really interesting how people, there are limitations when you cosplay a character, and they said, screw limitations, I'm going to cosplay 2 characters. That's just so great. My other, maybe the weirdest thing I've seen a fan do, they went to Denny's, stole the menu, and got a bunch of voice actors to sign the menu. And I remember being at this autograph session watching like Chris Kaysen or somebody sign a fucking Denny's menu. And then that same person was in a panel later and asked them, what's the weirdest thing you've ever signed? Specifically so that they would answer a Denny's menu. And sure enough, at least one person answered, well, some guy earlier had us signing a Denny's menu. And that guy was like, yes! Yes, he was so excited that was the answer.
From the back of the room, you just heard this voice, Senpai noticed me!
That's what it was. It was like this guy had gone out of his way to steal something from a place of business in order to get it signed so that people would remember him. And I'm like, damn, that's some lengths. I mean, like, when I want something autographed, I just go find something on my shelf that somebody's been in. And then, yeah, you carry around some extra stuff, but at least it makes sense. This guy went to Denny's, stole a menu, got it signed, and then basically was going, hey, remember that Denny's menu you just signed? It was me. Like, that was pretty wild.
I'm kind of in the same vein. I like to see mashups of video games with other different properties. One of the craziest that I've ever seen in recent memory was a mashup of Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past with the opening to Game of Thrones. And it was like, you know how in the opening to Kat, you've seen the show. You know how in the opening they have like that model of Westeros that's like, popping up out of the mechas and stuff. Well, someone had actually taken that opening sequence, but swapped out the lands of Westeros with the world map from the Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. So you had like Hyrule Castle, a little model Hyrule Castle rising up, little pop-up houses for Kakariko Village. And it was really creative, and I really love seeing that. And then there's another one another thing I really like is I like to see people to kind of reimagine older games with modern technology. And there's a guy that I've seen several of his videos posted around on Facebook. He's taking like the old Nintendo 64 Zelda games and remaking some of their environments in the current Unreal Engine, and it just every time he comes out with something, it's so beautiful to watch and look at, to see just the camera panning around inside this remade environment. But it also makes me cry because I know that this will never be a full video game that I can actually play. It's like, just why must you taunt me? Give me Ocarina of Time in Unreal Engine 4. Just give me that, and I can die happy.
Me Ocarina of Time or give me death.
Exactly. But it's like I love one of the things that makes this question so difficult to answer is that the minute you come up with something that's the most surprising and the most impressive thing you've ever seen somebody create, 5 minutes later somebody else comes along with something that's even more off the wall and out there. So that's one of the things that I love about geekdom in general is there's a surprise literally around every corner. People will come up with just about anything you can think of. Somebody will come up with, and they'll probably come up with something that you never even thought possible.
Yeah, I feel like I always feel like, okay, that's the most impressive cosplay I've ever seen, and then somebody else starts walking around a con with like light up robotic wings, and like LEDs everywhere, and I'm like, oh shit, nope, that's the most impressive thing I've ever seen.
Okay, and let's see here now. Okay, there was another question here. Let me see if I can dig it up. Oh, here's one here. This one comes from Lacey, and she asks all of us, since we're big fans of Voltron Legendary Defender, do we ever think we'll go back and do an episode on the original Voltron series, or God help us, Vehicle Force Voltron?
I would consider doing a show on Go Lion, the original Japanese version. I don't think I would do one on the original Voltron. I think, and I can't say for sure, but I feel like that's one that probably did not age well.
Yeah, the original Voltron, because I've gone back and watched what few episodes are up there on Netflix, because, you know, they got that thing when they've got the new cast picking out their favorite episodes from the old series, which I think you mentioned in our last episode. And it just, I've come to the conclusion that Voltron is one of those anime that is very much viewed through the nostalgia goggles. It's one of those things that people really loved because there wasn't really a whole lot of other options.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, it's one of those things like we loved it because it was there and we had no other choice.
Yeah, I loved it because I was 5 and, like, it was great. And, you know, upon reflection, you know, listening to little clips of it, I'm like, I don't think I could watch that the way that I watched it when I was a kid. Now, I would consider watching Go Lion. I'd watch the Japanese version because I think there was probably, just from what little I've seen of just straight Go Lion, it was a little different. I'd like to hear their actual names that they were given, which is a wild concept. I don't think I could listen to Sven, is what I'm saying. But I'd like to hear all of their names. I'd like to hear their voices. There's probably a little more mature themes that are thrown in there that would have been erased from the original Voltron as we knew it, because the original Voltron was marketed for, you know, like young kids and stuff. And so I'd like to watch that to see what, you know, see if I remember anything really. If anything that I do remember is accurate, and to see kind of what has been cut. Could be interesting. I don't think I know anybody nearby that has Go Lion. One of my friends had it, and then he moved. So I'd have to actually secure a copy, but I'd like to watch it.
Yeah, that's the other problem. In order for us to actually do a show on it, we have to actually be able to watch it, which that's going to be a tall order, because they don't have the whole original series on Netflix anymore, I don't believe. And Vehicle Force is one of those anomalies. Like, I hear everybody keep talking about it, but nobody who I see talking about it actually remembers watching it. So
what a conundrum.
It's like, I know it exists. It existed. There's merch for it, but nobody I know has ever seen it. So, but yeah, I don't know. I think now, would you think we might consider going back and visiting some of the other Voltron shows, like the CG one that they did like 10 years ago? Dear
God, no. I don't think I could. I've seen the character designs. I wouldn't be able to take anything seriously.
All right. Okay, so yeah, I think we're pretty much gonna stick with Voltron Legendary Defender for now. So yeah. All right, and that's all the Ask Geek questions that we have for this week. Thank you as always for sending in to us. As always, you can send us your questions to drgonzo@nerdtothethirdpower.com. We love getting your questions and love reading them on the air. So yeah, get your questions in. And with that, we're going to jump right into our discussion topic, which this week is Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. Yeah, we know we're a couple weeks late, but, you know, as we said last week, fighting robot lions takes priority. So, but yeah, so we're going to go ahead and discuss this latest film in the Jurassic Park franchise. So let's just start with our general thoughts on the film. So, Kat, what did you think of this movie?
I know you and I are going to disagree because I loved this film. I honestly, I can't say I've really disliked a Jurassic film, even though I know some of them are trash. Some of them, looking at you, 2 and 3, are just not good films, but I still love them because the quality that I need is for you to say Jurassic Park and then put dinosaurs in it, and I'm happy. And that is literally all I need out of a Jurassic Park or Jurassic World film. So my standards are incredibly low. So I'm just going to put that out there. I don't necessarily need the highest quality because I'm going to like it no matter what. That being said, I super enjoyed this film. Beautiful, incredible graphics. Dinosaurs. I actually enjoyed the story quite a bit. There were many, many, many homages to older films, and I saw them, and I picked up on them, and I enjoyed them. Once again, Chris Pratt is a delight to watch on screen, and that might be it for my initial thoughts.
Okay. Well, my initial thoughts. I'm just gonna have to put my cards on the table. I thought this movie was really dumb. It really was. I walked out of that theater actually pretty disappointed, and that's saying something because I didn't really have high expectations going in. But yeah, I thought this movie was pretty dumb. And full disclosure, I probably would be a lot kinder to this movie than I'm going to be if it weren't for the fact that for 3/4 of this film there were these two little kids that were ostensibly seated next to me in the theater, but really spent most of the movie running around back and forth the row and making a whole bunch of noise. One of them, poor girl, before the movie started, she was running around. She ran right into my foot because I had my feet up on the new reclining seats. And let's just say if I'd known that she was going to keep doing that throughout the entire movie, I'd have raised my feet just a little higher before impact. But yeah, I thought this movie was just really dumb. It felt to me like it didn't know what it wanted to be. And I'll go into more detail on that as we break the movie down to its component parts. But I couldn't get into many of the characters. I couldn't get into the plot. I just thought it was just overall. And I'm really, we'll get into this again. I'm really not all that happy with what I believe they're setting up with this movie. So, but we'll get into that as we go along. So let's start by breaking this movie down to its component pieces, starting with the script and the plot. So, Kat, why don't you give us a rundown of the plot of this movie, such as it is?
Okay, so the basic premise is that the character Claire, played by Bryce Dallas Howard from the first Jurassic World film, is become part of this advocacy group for dinosaurs. And this group has become necessary because the island that they are on, which is Isla Nublar, so the first island, is actually a volcanic island, and the volcano has begun to erupt, and all of the dinosaurs are in danger. And there's a lot of people who don't want dinosaurs to go re-extinct. And Claire is fighting this losing battle to get support for getting the dinosaurs off the island, which would be very expensive and logistic nightmare thing to do. And she is approached by a guy named Eli Mills. And he represents the interests of another guy, Sir Benjamin Lockwood. And as we find out in the film, Sir Lockwood was John Hammond's former business partner and had helped him develop the technology to clone dinosaurs. And Mr. Mills represents Mr. Lockwood and is proposing that, okay, hey, we have this other island. It's going to be a sanctuary. We want to get the dinosaurs there, but we're sending a team in. We're doing it under the radar. It's not going to be exactly legal. And so we need you to do this quietly and get the dinosaurs off. And most importantly, we've got to get Blue off that island. Blue being the blue-shaded velociraptor from the previous film, because Blue is potentially the last of her species, and it's very important to very specifically save Blue. And they need Owen Grady, played by Chris Pratt from, again, the previous film, to go in and help find Blue, because nobody else is going to be able to find her except him. And so all of that sort of makes sense. And so Claire, Owen, and a group of Claire's advocacy people, one who's good with, she's like a, Paleo-veterinarian. So that's totally made up. a paleo veterinarian and a tech guy, Franklin and Zia. They basically are sent in to help with this. And they go in and they start retrieving some of the dinosaurs with this group of really shady individuals. One of whom is a big game hunter, and he's clearly not seen in the Jurassic Park films to know what happens to big game hunters. And anyway, so they go in and they start getting the dinosaurs. They find Blue, and then what would you call them? Like the mercenaries that are there turn on them and try to trap them on the island. And they are basically taking all the dinosaurs. And we don't know quite what for at this point, other than that they are trying to hide the evidence that they were that Owen and that group were there. And they do get Blue. They shoot Blue, which is really bad. And so they take Zia with them because she is a paleo veterinarian and could actually is like the only person there who could actually take care of Blue and stop the blood loss and make sure that Blue doesn't die. And it's very clear that they are overly concerned with getting Blue off the island, more so than any other dinosaur. So the group has a very harrowing escape from the island. They manage to sneak their way onto the freighter that is taking the dinosaurs away. And while this stuff is going on, we get clips of Mr. Mills, who is talking with Dr. Wu, who is like the head geneticist for the entire franchise so far. Now, while all of that is going on, and these guys are talking, we're introduced to Lockwood's granddaughter, Maisie. And Maisie is like the default child who has to be in every Jurassic Park film. There's always a kid to be in danger. And so Maisie is the new kid to be in danger, and I love her. She kind of overhears Mills and Wu talking about what's going to happen with the dinosaurs. And the truth comes out that there wasn't actually a sanctuary, that the dinosaurs were going to be brought in for resale, basically. That they are going to sell these dinosaurs to the black market. Toby Jones comes in as this, basically an auctioneer who's going to auction the dinosaurs off for profit. But specifically, they wanted Blue. And the selling of the rest of the dinosaurs is there to fund what they're going to do from there on out. And sorry, go ahead.
and it's at this point that the movie both really begins, because everything up to this point has just been a glorified prologue, and then also for me falls off the rails because so much of what of this plot is stuff that's been done before in this franchise, and B, makes not one lick of real sense to me. First off, let's talk a bit about Mills, who is the sleazy corporate executive for this movie, because there must always be one now. I couldn't get into him as a threatening villain.
Can we finish talking about what the plot of the film is before you start talking about the characters, though? Sure.
Oh, sorry.
I just wasn't sure if you wanted to finish that or not.
All right. Well, let me pick that up again. But it's like there's so much of this story that I don't know. So at this point, the movie just kind of falls apart for me. But anyway, we'll get into that. So Maisie overhears that Mills is planning to sell all these dinosaurs on the black market. And she goes to her grandfather, who is played by James Cromwell, and is a very, very old man. Like, it's pretty clear he's on his last legs. Tells him what's going on, and he does what is, to my mind, the dumbest thing you can possibly do when you're confronting someone who's the villain of the story. He goes, "Hey, did you really think you'd get away with this? I want you to go pick up the phone and call the police. So, and go turn yourself in." Like any villain has ever done that, ever. So he winds up getting smothered with a pillow for his trouble. Meanwhile, Owen and Claire have snuck aboard one of the ships that's taking the dinosaurs back, and they find that Zia, the paleo veterinarian, and what was the name of the technician? Franklin?
Franklin.
Yeah, are also there. Zia's basically a prisoner. She's there to play the Saw 3 game where, you know, if Blue dies, then she dies as well. So they need to, but Blue is hemorrhaging blood, so they need to get a blood sample from another theropod of less than 5 fingers to give her a transfusion, which is not how that fucking works. But that's an argument. You know, we're already in a movie about cloned dinosaurs. Do we really want to lose our shit over medical science? So they have to go and get a blood transfusion from a T-Rex, which is not a sentence that I thought I would ever speak aloud, and yet here we are. And I gotta say, that was probably one of the dumbest sequences in the movie for me, actually. Mostly because I'll just say this: look, the T-Rex is my favorite dinosaur ever. And in one respect, I'm similar to Kat. I measure, you know, it takes very little for, you know, a dinosaur movie to make me happy. Just give me a T-Rex. So I actually measure these films by the T-Rex index. The more T-Rex, the better the film is in my eyes. And when you've got a Jurassic Park film and your T-Rex spends the lion's share of its screen time asleep, you have failed drastically in my eyes. So they wind up you know, hitching a ride to the mansion and discovering Mills' plot, but he winds up catching them and throwing them in a jail cell while he auctions off these dinosaurs. And they manage to Owen manages to trick it wasn't a pachycephalosaur. I can't remember what the hell it was called, though.
It's an offshoot of a pachy.
Yeah. The not quite a pachycephalosaur into busting down the wall and the doors of the prison so that they can escape, and then they set all the dinosaurs, well, not all the dinosaurs, but a bunch of them loose in the compound to make some chaos. Meanwhile, we learn that all these dinosaurs are being sold to fund Dr. Wu's next project, a hybrid between the Indominus Rex and a Velociraptor. I'll now give you a moment to try and figure out how that works when it was explicitly stated that the Indominus Rex was already part raptor, so redundancy, to try and fund his work on that. And he's already got a prototype. And this dinosaur is, we are told, able to follow commands and be given a target to execute. Like a goddamn reptilian Terminator. So they wind up disrupting the auction. The Indoraptor gets loose, and at this point the movie becomes Resident Evil with a dinosaur. Trapped in a mansion with a dinosaur. Blue manages to break herself free, and there's a knockdown drag-out fight three-way drag-out fight between the Indoraptor and Blue, before the whole thing moves up to the roof, where they manage to get it to... I can't remember exactly how they did it off the top of my head at this moment, but they managed to get it to fall through a skylight and impale itself on a fossilized Triceratops head. And at that point, you know, they've discovered that there's in the midst of all this chaos, there's a gas leak that will kill off all the dinosaurs unless they open up the cages and set the dinosaurs loose off into the wild. And oh, by the way, Maisie is a clone of her mother. For no reason whatsoever.
That was wild.
Literally, they just threw that out there. And then the movie ends with dinosaurs being out in the wild on the mainland. And Ian Malcolm appears to say, look, you know, welcome to Jurassic World.
Told you so.
And that's pretty much how the movie ends. And the biggest problem that I have with this film's plot is I felt like it didn't know what it wanted to be. In the beginning, it felt like it was trying to go for kind of a retread of The Lost World, where they're trying to do a conservation thing to, you know, save the animals. And it's like, okay, they're going to set up this ethical quandary of, you know, should we be trying to preserve these, let's be honest, man-made animals that don't really belong in our current ecosystem, or they should just be left to die. And I thought that maybe they were just going to try and do that plot again. And then the third of the way into the movie, suddenly it switches gears to where dinosaurs are now being sold as weapons. Okay, so now we've gone into kind of a corporate thriller film with dinosaurs. Okay, all right, I can kind of stick around with this. Then the Indoraptor gets loose. And like I said, it literally becomes a survival horror film. It becomes Resident Evil with a dinosaur. And I felt like this movie just didn't know. It felt very schizophrenic. It didn't know what it wanted to be. And as a result, none of the things that it tried to do really got off the ground, because by the time it finished setting up one thread, it knocked it down to set up a completely different one.
It did have so much going on, like, when you think about it, which isn't hard, there's really so many different, like, points that they're trying to make, like you said, because they're trying to bring up the concept of animal rights and animal conservation. They're trying to bring up the concept of genetic manipulation and, the potential dangers of, the so they have the backlash of, or the plot point, or the sticking theme is what I'm trying to say. The sticking theme of Lost World, which is animal conservation, and then you have the sticking theme of Jurassic Park, which is genetic power cannot be contained, and a lot of the it kind of had some horror elements to it, which was interesting. But it was a lot of different things that they were trying to do. I thought that it was fine. I didn't really have a problem with doing those many things, because I kind of looked at them and thought, what are they going to do with that in the next movie? It felt like they were setting up the next film, which I assume is what they were doing. I don't even know if there is another one that they're going to do. If they're making Jurassic World a trilogy, which I thought I heard, but I kind of watched it with the assumption that, okay, yeah, I can see that they're setting something up for another film.
Well, we'll get into that, or at least I'll get into that close to the end of the show, because I have thoughts on that, because that leads back to something in the books. But continue.
So, like, I looked at some of the plot points and some of the themes, and I was like, they're doing a lot. They're trying to do a lot in one film. And there was some like, I guess, some hammier parts, some cheesier parts, but I thought that the story itself was fine. It was a little disjointed, but I didn't really care.
No, it felt very tonally inconsistent, and some of the set pieces I thought were just, really, really stupid. Like, we mentioned the bit where they've got to get a blood transfusion from a sleeping tyrannosaur, and that whole scene just felt really silly, and not like, haha, I'm gonna laugh at this silly, but just like, really, this is what we're doing, silly.
I felt like that was an unnecessary scene. Like, it was fine for being silly, because I expect a little silly scene with Chris Pratt in every film he's in. But that whole thread felt unnecessary.
Yeah, the whole injured Blue plot line, and really the whole, if now I sit and think about it, the whole plot line about Blue in general in this film could have been cut, and you wouldn't really have noticed anything missing from this movie. Which I guess now that leads to sort of segues into the characters in this movie. And I'm gonna start by saying the character of Eli Mills. It's like, first off, he's a sleazy corporate executive, which is something we've seen before in a Jurassic Park film. But he's not even a good one. Like, I figured it out later. He's Justin Hammer. He's like the Justin Hammer of the Jurassic World. Yeah, but stepping back out of universe, whereas Justin Hammer, you could tell that the performer, the actor playing Justin Hammer, knew he was playing a character and knew what he was going to do with it. I didn't feel like Mills's character really knew what the fuck he was doing in this movie. It felt like I don't want to say he was phoning it in, because that implies that he had some knowledge of what he was doing. I feel like he was just completely over his head and didn't know what kind of movie he was supposed to be in. Like, I think he emoted all of once in this movie, and that was when he yelled at the little girl.
You know what he is, though? He's Hammond from the books. Because John Hammond in the books, that's what he's like. He only cares about the money. So here's Here's spoiler warning that we should have given at the beginning. And at the end, when you're looking at it and you're like, which one of these fucking dinosaurs is going to kill Mills? I thought for sure it was going to be the Compies, because I really felt like Mills was a bit of a Hammond character. Like he was meant to represent like the book version of Hammond, and the book version of Hammond gets eaten by Compies, rightfully so, because he was awful. And I thought, oh, this would be such a nice homage to how Hammond dies in the books, because a lot of what Mills, you know, it's a lot of the same thing where Mills doesn't care about the science, he cares about turning a profit. He doesn't really care about the creatures as living beings, he just cares about how he can sell them. And that was what Hammond was like, basically, in the books.
Yeah, now that you point that out, I can see sort of the parallels. I still wish that the actor knew what the fuck he was doing, because it really felt like you know how when you go to a little kid's recital and they don't really try and act, they're just reciting their lines from memory.
I've been that kid.
I think we've all been that kid. But that's what his actor's performance felt like in this movie. Like he was just reciting his lines from memory, but wasn't really acting. The other character that I had major problems with, because of just how pointless she was Maisie.
Oh, I loved Maisie.
I don't know, maybe this is just because it's been done in every Jurassic movie up to this point, but like I'm getting tired of the kid character, and just in general. And what really makes kind of going is like I couldn't figure out what her purpose in the film was supposed to be. Like let's look at the kids' characters in the past films. Okay, Tim and Lex. Okay, in addition,
utterly pointless, completely pointless.
Well, they were catalysts for Alan Grant's character development, from being the kid-hating grump he is at the start of the movie to being a little more of a father figure at the end of the film. So they served a narrative purpose for Grant, and they also had freaking personalities of their own. We can argue all day whether or not they were good personalities, but that's separate. We can at least agree they had them. You know, Malcolm's daughter in the second movie didn't really serve any real purpose whatsoever, and just was there to be the load. The kid character in the third movie actually is the catalyst for the whole plot, because they got to go and rescue this kid, and we kind of have a repeat of the first film, where it's kind of like he's there for Grant's character development. Kid character in the fourth movie, again, they're there just for Claire to get her realize that babies are awesome. We can, we'll save the argument whether or not that's good or bad for another table. Maisie, her whole purpose was what? To push a button? Like, there was no real reason for her to be there, and even less for the whole big shocking reveal that she was a clone. Like, it's treated in the film like it's this big major reveal, that I was just sitting in the theater going, okay, she's a clone, so?
Well, the whole point of her being a clone is to emphasize what Malcolm is talking about when Malcolm, all 5 seconds that he's in it, is that you can't put the genie back in the bottle. Like, the genetic technology is only going to progress, and it can do things that we never imagined. And we, like in the past, we've seen it. Hey, we used it to create dinosaurs. And Maisie serves as an example of the technology is already there to create people. And that's why Mills wants to keep her around, because like the technology that would go into creating a human being, like, is outstanding. And it's kind of terrifying too.
Well, then
it was. Now, I will admit that it was kind of pointless for the film, unless it is to set up a plot point for a future film. Because, and if you'll let me finish talking without interrupting me, Maisie was by far the most useful out of any of the goddamn kid characters. She was certainly the most believable out of the kid characters who have been forced into every Jurassic film. Because, none of these kids have ever been necessary in a film, but she's the one who made the most sense to be there, other than in the first film. And she's actually useful. She actually like conveys important information to people and like spurs the plot along a little bit. She's not just there for one character's character development. She's part of the story as it actually progresses. At least in my opinion, anyway.
Well, we'll have to agree to disagree there, but I want to go back to something that you said, where she represents to Mills the technology, that genetic technology and its potential. Well, in that case, that speaks even less about Mills's motivation, because okay, he's got proof that we can clone a human being. All right, even if you don't want to let the world know that you can clone entire human beings, let's talk about the applications of being able to clone individual organs. I mean, shit, you could. All the people waiting out there looking for kidneys, you could open up a kidney selling company. You could open up an organ transplant company. You could pretty much cure cancer. Why the hell do you need to steal dinosaurs? You've got the potential for unlimited money right there. You may also be setting off the plot of Repo the Genetic Opera, but that's a discussion for another table. We'll let the fanfic writers run with that one.
My thought would be that the clientele that he so clearly likes to cater to has better use of weapons and could use animals as weapons. And it's not just animals as weapons. He was also selling animals for hunting, for sport, for whatever, So, that clientele, that high-level clientele who want the exclusivity of being one of the few dinosaur owners. And then he was also selling, I believe, was he selling like the genetic makeup of them as well, so that people could build their own dinosaurs?
At least we see at the end that at least one of the people that was there at the mansion made off with some of the embryos. Right. So there's at least one set of viable embryos floating around.
Right, and I don't know if that was like Wu and like Wu's team or what, but in any case, there is, I think, the strongest potential for what they were trying to go with the Endoraptor was creating a trainable dinosaur that you could basically build an army out of. But Maisie, they could grow organs and sell them off to people and become a kidney store. But once you go down that route, they're going to lose the money. There's once,
I'm sorry, I'm just laughing at the concept of a kidney store. What color would you like, sir?
A blue kidney, if you please. This guy clearly isn't a humanitarian. He's clearly not interested in making the world a better place or anything like that. I don't think he would be motivated to do something like, helping the human race by helping them regrow organs because he has the cloning technology. I think Maisie could become a prototype, here, look, we can regrow humans. We have the technology. Now let's see who wants to pay the most to get back their loved ones. That would be more of what he would do.
Well, yeah, but then at that point, it stops being Jurassic Park and becomes, I don't know, AI 2 or something. Yeah. But anyway, but another, I want to circle back to you bringing up Wu, who's another character that I have major problems in this film, and that I can't figure, and it's the same issue I had with him, less so in the first Jurassic World. I can't figure out what the fuck he's trying to do beyond just being a mad scientist. Like, okay, in the first Jurassic World, okay, he was an employee of Maserati, and he made the Indominus Rex because that's what he was being paid to do. Okay, cool, I get that. Kind of the waste of B.D. Wong's talent, but all right, we'll roll with it. This movie, it seems like he's gone full on Victor Frankenstein. He just wants to make a monster dinosaur because what, he can?
Well, I think in this case, yet again, he was paid to do it. But in this case, it was far more specific. They were looking not just for like random predator traits to be flashy and garner public image. In this case, he was told, we want you to breed a dinosaur that can take orders like the velociraptors in the last movie did. But this is also, I think he's only been, I believe, in 3 films, but watching his character over 3 films is a very strange change. And he's still this brilliant geneticist, but he's this brilliant geneticist who is like kind of an egomaniac now, where he just doesn't give a shit about people or even the animals anymore, it seems. It's just like, he's just so wrapped up in, look what I did, and I did what you do, and I'm not responsible for anything. He's kind of become the main villain of the Jurassic franchise at this point, because he keeps surviving these films to go on. It gets pulled out and rescued because he's valued for his genetic prowess, I guess. But he's kind of like the main villain at this point, because he just keeps creating and creating with no empathy at all for either the creature that he's making or the people that it could potentially hurt. It's really crazy to think about Wu from Jurassic, the first Jurassic Park, where he was just like hey, yeah, we made a raptor. It's even weirder if you compare him to the book version, who dies in Jurassic Park. Like, he doesn't make it past book 1.
Yeah, and then we have to talk about him, because when he appears, you're obligated to speak of him. Jeff Goldblum. There was no real point for him to be in this movie except just as fan service.
Yes,
I mean, which is what Jeff Goldblum is in every movie he's in, is fan service. But I would have thought that they would, given his history with InGen and with Jurassic Park, that they would have done more with him in the narrative. Like, I would have loved to have seen a bit in the movie where he and Claire actually talked and spoke on their competing philosophies. I would love to see them debate, even just briefly, the merits and ethics of saving the dinosaurs versus letting them die, because they've both been through the same scenario of the dinosaurs getting loose in the park, but they both came out with very different outlooks on the situation. Malcolm's just like, no, they should just, if we can get rid of them, let's get rid of them. Whereas Claire's like, let's save them. And I would love to, I think it would have been really awesome to see these two sit down and talk and hash it out for a bit. And I feel like it was a huge wasted opportunity for the film not to do that.
I feel like that would have just been one more thing that the movie didn't have time, just cramming so much in. I felt like it was just the right amount of Jeff Goldblum, because of Jeff Goldblum being the kind of, like we said, he's a if you...
He's Jeff Goldblum.
He's Jeff Goldblum. He's no longer Dr. Ian Malcolm. This is just the evolution of the actor, especially in the last couple of years, where he's gotten insanely popular again, where we wouldn't be looking at Ian Malcolm anymore. We'd be looking at Jeff Goldblum. And I think a lot of people wouldn't... I think we would find it distracting as viewers, or at least the ladies, because all the ladies love Jeff Goldblum. He's Jeff Goldblum now. I don't know that he could just go back to, playing Dr. Ian Malcolm on a movie for more than a couple of minutes without us going, yeah, but you're Jeff Goldblum. I'm sure it would be fine. I'm sure it would be great. But yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, so that we don't run too long, let's move on into the presentation of this movie.
Oh, so gorgeous. So gorgeous.
I will say there's one thing that I do have. There's one soothing coup I have to make in this movie's ear before I drive a stake through its heart, and that's that I love that they actually did a lot of practical effects this time around. Yes. I mentioned in our Jurassic World review that I hated that all the dinosaurs were only CGI, because they never felt like they were there. It never felt like they had any sense of weight or presence, and I didn't have that problem in this movie. I love that they actually did some practical effects in this film with the dinosaurs, and it was great to see them bring back the rigging model for Rexy, because I can't confirm it, but I seem to remember reading somewhere that the animatronic that they used for the blood transfusion scene was actually the same one that they used for the first film. I can't confirm that, but I remember reading that somewhere.
I would believe that. I thought this was so impressive, because for these films, there's always dinosaurs in them, but it is always inevitably a movie about the people. So it's been a while since we've had a Jurassic film that has been this dinosaur heavy. Usually it's a pretty strong limitation of the number of dinosaurs that they'll show, the number of different kinds of dinosaurs. It's never extremely diverse. Like, that's why I felt like a lot of this was a good homage to Lost World, because I think Lost World probably had the most diverse lineup of dinosaurs in it. I don't know if that's true or not, but it feels like it is, because they just showed so many different kinds for short spurts of time. And so in this film, we got so many different kinds of dinosaurs, with a lot more screen time than I think we would have seen in past films. So, you had your Ankylosaurus and that, whatever that Pachy was that had the slightly bigger crown than a normal Pachy. It was a lot of diversity. And it was all gorgeous. It was all gorgeous. Rexy was so good to see on screen. I love that, they updated scars and everything to reflect her last major battle. Can we just talk a minute about the visuals, the Brachiosaurus on the dock? Because that was by far the most heartbreaking thing I've ever seen in one of the Jurassic franchise films, but also just really stunningly done. Maybe a little hammy, maybe just a smidge hammy, but like in the visuals of that last Brachiosaurus trying to, like, it sees the boat leaving, like it just somehow knows that it, that was escape, and it's like now it's resigned to die on this dock, burning in fucking lava, and all this steam and smoke is coming up, and you just see it in this red smoke, and you see it go down, and you hear it go down, and that's the most fucking depressing thing I've ever seen. But it was so beautifully done, because I thought for sure they were just gonna cheap out and just pan away and let us leave it to our imaginations. But they left it just enough to the imagination, but with that haunting visual. And then the other visual that really kind of blew me away was when Maisie goes back into her room and hides under the covers, and you have and it's straight out of a horror scene rather than this sort of action film where the Endoraptor is creeping in and reaching over her bed. And I know that was in the trailer and everything, and it's just reaching its claws out. That's some straight up horror movie shit.
Yeah, that shot standing on its own, I thought was really well done.
Yeah.
There were a lot of visuals and shots in the film that if you remove them from the wider film, they are really great, like the Brachiosaurus on the dock, or the Endoraptor in the bedroom scene. Or another one was the scene where near the end where the dinosaurs are in the prison area. They've all been let out of their cages, but they've kind of the cast has made a decision that they're going to let these animals die, and you see them kind of all trying to climb over each other to get away from the gas. That I thought was, I didn't think it was really heartbreaking, because at that point I resigned myself to this movie being dumb, but when I remove it from the greater context, it was pretty well done. Or even some shots, I'll tell you one shot that I really loved was a scene where they're in the museum, and they're in one of the exhibit cages, and Maisie's looking out at the glass, and you see the Endoraptor's teeth just kind of appear from the other side. I love shots like that. And I thought that was really cool. And it, they're these little glints that this movie could have been so much more than what it turned out to be.
Yes. I also appreciate there was lots of just little things here and there scattered all over the place that were visual homages to the other films, and they were fairly easy to pick. But there were so many great, just stunning visuals.
So now, what were some of these moments? Because the only one that I really picked up on was the last shot of Rexy after she kills the Carnotaur, and she kind of does that roar, and she's in the same pose that she was in at the end of the first movie. That's the only one that I was like, okay, yeah, that's a tip of the hat to the previous movies. What were some others that you saw? I'm
going to struggle to remember them. I know they were there. When they're in the gyrosphere, mm-hmm. and you see whichever dinosaur it was, his head peeking at them coming in from the side and looking at them. That's obviously like they've done that shot so many times. I think they've done that in every Jurassic film. They've had some large carnivore like looking to its side since they did the first one. Because that's definitely like in Jurassic Park, the scene where the kids are in the car and they've got the flashlight up and you see Rexy's eyes dilate and everything, or narrow and then dilate or whatever. Like every film does that one, so I'm always glad to see it when it's there. Some of the bagging and tagging of the dinosaurs was fairly reminiscent of Lost World. I'm trying to remember if there were any major visual cues from the third film, other than, gosh, I don't know. I can't think of anything actually from the third film. Lots of little things for Jurassic World. That I believe no, that was just the preview. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head. I'm going to go see it again real soon because my friend didn't get to see it. So I'm probably going to see it sometime this week, if not just straight up tonight.
Okay.
So I'll try to get back to you if I remember more visual cues, but there were quite a few.
All right. Okay, so let's start by kind of wrapping this up because we're getting ready to run a little bit long here. But there's one thing that I want to kind of touch on, and that was how the movie ends.
Oh my God.
Releasing the dinosaurs out into the wild. And if you go back and you listen to our Jurassic World review, or if not in the review itself, I think I brought it up in the Ask a Geek in the following episode. But one of the things that I was really kind of irritated about was in the books. There's a subplot that's in the books that Crichton keeps on picking up and then putting back down again, and never really doing anything with. Is this idea that some dinosaurs have escaped from the islands and have gotten to the mainland? Like the first third of, like the whole plot of the first book gets kicked off because a bunch of compies have gotten off the island and are attacking small children on the mainland. And the whole first third of the second book centers around this raptor carcass that's washed up on Costa Rica. And at the end of the first book, we learn that, there are these sightings of dinosaur-resembling animals that are attacking farms, eating livestock, but Crichton never goes anywhere with it. And I've wanted the movies to pick up that plot thread and do something with it about maybe having some of these dinosaurs on the mainland and how human beings now have to coexist with these animals. And it looks like that the next film is going to be that, but I really don't like how they've set that up, because what I see them doing with this is sort of like, I guess a dinosaur apocalypse is the only thing I can really come up with. I'm seriously, I'm imagining like a scenario where like kind of a World War D scenario where, dinosaurs are overrunning cities and shit, and, society basically collapses as we run away from these new alpha predators. And it just, the way the movie ended, just left a bad taste on it, because I see one or two things happening. Either there being this whole thing where dinosaurs are overrunning the communities and humanity is basically having to flee, and we're no longer the alpha species on the planet, or we're gonna go fucking Tom Clancy with dinosaurs, and now we're seeing dinosaurs being sold as biological weapons. And I feel like kind of at this point the franchise has gone so far off the rails from the original germ of an idea that was in the original Crichton novels that it I don't feel like there's any way that the next movie can really feel like a Jurassic Park movie, if that makes any sense. Like Jurassic World, it felt like it had the same tone, setting, and universe of the first trilogy. This movie felt like it kind of threw all that out in favor of this new, I guess, Mad Max with dinosaurs is the only way that I can really describe where I see this going from here.
Right. And that's like the catch-22, is that you can't keep making Jurassic Park over and over, because people have done nothing but complain about, well, same setting, it's the same people, it's the same thing over and over. So like moving to the mainland is the only thing that makes sense. And even if you keep the dinosaurs like in the park, you'll never evolve the worlds that they're living in. Basically, you'll just keep making Jurassic Park over and over. So basically the dinosaurs getting loose just seems like the most natural progression for the films to go, unless they want to keep being the same film over and over, just with different peoples. And it's, it's something I kind of would want to see. My only qualm with it is that it ended on, like you said, like such a nihilistic note. And I'm totally okay with it. I'm okay with this direction that it's going, because, I think there was a very real reason for changing it from Jurassic Park to Jurassic World. I don't think it was just because they were going to rename the park Jurassic World. I think they were literally going for a grander scope when they set out to make the new films, I guess. My hang up with the end is that I don't think they can get to, an extinction of humanity level because there aren't enough dinosaurs. I don't know how many exactly came over, but this wasn't exactly Noah's Ark. They didn't, at least show that they were going out of their way to get a boy and a girl of every dinosaur so that they could repopulate the species.
The raptors came side by side upon the ark. Wherever that song goes. Yeah,
as far as we could tell, they only brought one raptor, they brought one T-Rex, they brought one Allosaurus. There might have been a couple of multiples somewhere in there, but they didn't do a very good job of showing it. And we know that, the way that they appeared to have spread out is like, okay, these dinosaurs kind of all went their own direction. So it's not like they're going to be, doing a lot of breeding. And even then, that kind of shit takes time. So we're not going to see an immediate apocalypse because of the dinosaurs that escaped. With the exception of the mosasaur, because that moment was huge. Just never going into the ocean again.
And even then, that thing's got a lifespan, and there's only one of it. That problem is going to take care of itself eventually.
Right, and with a limited number of dinosaurs, it would not be super hard for a lot of them, especially the urban, to get picked up and taken someplace or just taken out. Like the dinosaurs that got released, I don't think are going to last that long, with the exception of Blue and some of the other smaller predators who can stealth, basically. The real danger comes from the people who currently have the genetic material to make more dinosaurs.
And that's why I think they're going with the whole dinosaurs as biological weapons thing in the next film, which, like I said, at that point, it's no longer Jurassic Park. It's Resident Evil with dinosaurs.
It's Jurassic World.
Although I will say this, if they pull a stealth franchise switch on us and segue this Jurassic World series into a Dino Crisis series of films, I will recant everything, because Dino Crisis was an awesome game, and I would love to see a Dino Crisis movie.
Well, we're assuming they make another one, which I feel like they were going to, but I don't have any confirmation of that. It will be very interesting to see how it goes, because again, they've set themselves up for disaster for everyone involved. It's just nothing but disaster. For the human race, for the dinosaurs, it's a really bad situation, but it's the situation they're in. So we'll see. Plus the element of potentially human cloning. I know there was some sketches that went around a few years ago. There was rumors that the Jurassic World film was going to be about human dinosaur hybrids that had been genetically created hybrids. And I'm a little bit worried about the addition of Maisie. Them potentially heading towards some sort of human dinosaur hybrid, now that we know that human cloning in this world is entirely possible. That, they could be heading towards something like that. And it had such bad feedback that they ended up not doing it. But
I'm making you this promise right now. If I go to see the next Jurassic World film and they do the human dinosaur hybrids, the very minute that hybrid shows up on screen, I'm getting up out of my seat and I'm walking out the door.
And I will sit through it and groan.
I am not about that life. So anyway, so that's about all the time that we have. So let's start winding things down by giving our final thoughts on the film. So, Kat, final summary of your thoughts on Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom.
Oh gosh, I loved it. I cried several times over dinosaurs. I have very strong feelings about dinosaurs, and I'm very much in favor of them eating shitty people. And that is what I wanted out of the film, and that is what I got, so I am pleased. It is an extremely flawed film, and I understand why a lot of people are unhappy with it or just say, meh, it was all right. But I think if you're a really big fan and have sort of middling standards, then you might enjoy the film. I'm going to go see it. Probably either tonight or tomorrow as of this recording time. So I highly enjoyed it.
Okay, well, like I said at the start of this movie, I thought this movie was really dumb. I had to work really hard to find stuff in this movie that I enjoyed. And that's a real shame because I love Jurassic Park, and in many ways I'm like Kat. You give me dinosaurs eating shitty people and I'll be very happy. And again, going back to what I said, like I said, the T-Rex index, if ever you need to do something to improve your dinosaur movie, more T-Rex is always a valid solution. But I couldn't get into this movie, and I just thought it was really dumb. So anyway, this is the part of the show where we give our final ratings on the film. As always, our rating scale is from best to worst. See it now, wait for matinee, wait for DVD, wait for cable, don't even bother, and Brian's rating, fuck this movie. So Kat, what is your final rating of Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom?
Okay, I would say go see the matinee, unless you are a diehard JP fan like myself, who got a new Rexy figurine the day that I went and saw the film. Yeah, if you're a diehard fan and if you have a pretty high tolerance of Lost World and Jurassic Park 3, then yeah, go see this film right now. You're gonna love it. If you have a very low tolerance for the lesser of the Jurassic franchise films, then go see it in a matinee and just don't pay full price. Okay.
I'm gonna go ahead and say like this movie's really, really dumb, but I mean it's a time waster. I would say wait for cable, catch it when you're flipping through channel surfing. They show it on HBO after the DVD comes out. Or catch it on Netflix or something, but it's not something that you really it's not something you need to spend money on. It's the kind of movie that you put on the television to have some background noise when you're doing something else. And that's really the kindest thing that I can say about it. So yeah, I'm gonna say wait for cable. And that's all the time that we have for Nerd to the Third Power this week. Thank you as always for tuning in. We will see you next week. As always, I'm Dr. Gonzo.
I'm Kat.
We'll see you next week. Taka, play us out. But anyway, we're gonna to distract ourselves from this mind-destroying heat. We're gonna be discussing our topic of discussion this week, which is kind of redundant, which is a sign that our brains are skimped by the heat. Let me try that again.
This time with less words,
yeah,
but in the right order.